Most Apple fans would love to have the iPhone X as their daily driver, but not everyone can afford the steep $900 to $1,000 price tag on the device. So, for the budget Apple fans, let's see if the iPhone 6s is worth it in 2018. Now, the iPhone 6s holds up pretty okay in 2018. It still is supported by the latest iOS and has an all aluminum body, which feels really nice in the hand. This is also the last iPhone with a headphone jack, which is something that I really like about it personally, and I'm very disappointed that Apple discontinued the headphone jack in their later iPhones. Let's start by talking about the build quality of this device. Now, like I said earlier, it does have an all unibody aluminum design, and it does feel very nice in the hand. To the top, it's pretty bland with nothing there. To the left side, we have our mute notification switch as well as the volume up and down button. To the bottom, we have our headphone jack, a microphone, and a lightning port, and a single speaker. And to the right side, we have our power button as well as our SIM card tray. To the back of the device, we do have a 12 megapixel f2.2 camera along with a dual tone LED flash as well as the Apple logo. And finally, to the front of the device, we do have a 5 megapixel f2.2 front facing camera, the earpiece, a 4.7 inch IPS LCD display, as well as the home button and fingerprint scanner towards the bottom. In my opinion, the build quality still holds up to the 2018 standards. It doesn't have the glass back as in most flagships now, but I feel like the aluminum gives a slightly more grippy feel and is less prone to fingerprints. Another thing is that it has a very small form factor, which makes it really easy to use with one hand. Now let's talk about the screen of this device. Like I said earlier, it does have a 4.7 inch display, but it also has really big bezels on the front, which makes it look pretty outdated. The resolution is 750 by 1334, which is good for 326 ppi. It is an IPS LCD display and it gets pretty bright outdoors, and viewing angles are also really good. Another thing that I noticed is that it doesn't look terrible even though the resolution seems pretty low, but if you compare it to one of the high-end phones of this year, you will notice a pretty big difference. However, in day-to-day use, the screen looks really nice with good brightness and pretty natural colors, so I don't really have any complaints here, just that the resolution is a little low. Now inside, the device is powered by an Apple A9 chip, which is a dual-core clocked at 1.8 GHz, and of PowerVR GT7600 graphics. The 2GB RAM is a little low for this day and age, but it does hold up pretty well since iOS is so well optimized. The phone comes in 16, 32, 64, and 128GB models, and here I have the 64GB model. So opening up apps is very responsive, but I wouldn't do heavy multitasking on this device since it only has 2GB of RAM. I also wouldn't recommend this phone if you're really into gaming, because it doesn't hold up very well with high graphic or very intensive games. The lighter titles will work just fine, but expect to see some frame drops with the higher end titles. Overall guys, I give the performance a pretty good rating. Since day-to-day use it's fine, but I wouldn't recommend multitasking or gaming. Now moving on to the main camera of this device, it does have a 12 megapixel f2.2 rear facing camera with a dual tone LED flash. Now these produce pretty nice pictures with very natural colors. I think that this still holds up pretty well today. Even though it might not look as good as a Pixel 2, it still looks very natural and colors don't pop very much. You will see some over sharpening and some blown out highlights, but HDR does work pretty well to limit that. Another thing I noticed is that the front facing camera isn't that good anymore. Apple front facing cameras are much better than the Android ones, even with the Android flagships, but this one you can see a lot of noise gathered, especially in low light. And speaking of low light, the rear facing camera doesn't handle it very well either. Shots do have a lot of noise as the ISO gets cranked up, and the dual tone LED flash helps a little bit, but not that much. So overall guys, the camera is still decent for this day and age, but I would recommend looking for a different phone if you're looking for really good camera quality. But if you are just using the camera casually, then it should be fine for you. And moving on to battery life of this phone, the iPhone 6s does have a 1715 mAh battery. In my experience, I did get around 3.5 hours of screen on time with some pretty mediocre usage, which is just about average I'd say for these days. So overall guys, battery life is just about mediocre. With my usage, it got me through one day, but just barely, and if you use it even more intensively, then it might only get you through half the day and you might have to charge it midday. So now let's answer the big question: is the iPhone 6s worth it in 2018? In my eyes, no. I feel like it has too many downsides and is a little outdated for this time. One, the bezels are really big, and that hasn't really changed across iPhones, But another thing is that the camera is just about decent and the battery life isn't great. Now Apple hasn't really been known to keep up good battery life with older phones, which is why I wouldn't really recommend it now. Some good things are that the performance is still pretty smooth and it's updated to the latest iOS, but I feel like gaming is not great on this phone, and if that's something you really want to do, then I really wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend looking at the iPhone 7 as that has dropped in price. You will get better specs, better battery life, but you will lose that headphone jack, so that's something to consider. But overall guys, I wouldn't really recommend this phone in 2018 as I feel like the iPhone 7 or 7 Plus would be a better bet if you're on a budget and still want an iPhone. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.